Hi, everybody. This is Steven. I'm back again at the Ace Cafe booth at the 2014 AIMExpo, and I'm sitting next to a guy that's absolutely legendary. He probably doesn't think he is, but in motorcycle racing, Kevin Schwantz, and I'm with Mark Wilsmore of the Ace Cafe, and I'm going to actually let you guys talk a little bit, but what I want to ask you is, when you were racing, and I mentioned to you when I walked up that I watched the Unridables again for like the 5th time because I like it so much. The bikes at the time, the pinnacle of Grand Prix racing at the time was a 500cc two-stroke, right?
That's correct.
And what was the horsepower that bike was making back then?
You know, from when we started, or when I started racing full-time on 500s in 88, probably 140 horse, to when I finished it in 95, probably 175 horse.
Okay. So now they're making motorcycles that you can buy at a dealership with more horsepower stock like that. But why is it that when you watch Grand Prix racing from the 80s and the 90s and you watch those bikes, it was like a machine that was possessed? So every time, and there's a shot in the Unridables of you on the 34 coming out of a corner and going on the gas, and the bike just lifts up, and you're just carrying it all the way through the corner onto the straight in like a full-on power wheelie. Why is that? Why did those bikes develop that type of torque and that type of rapid response?
Well, the two-stroke, that's one of the things that it did never have a lot of, was torque. So you really had to, with setup, you really had to get close on the gearbox ratios, which you could change gearbox ratios, every one of them, a couple kilometers each direction. That was part of the puzzle of the weekend, was trying to get the gearbox right for the actual speed that you would be able to get around the track with the bike setup. So power-wise, on a good day, the 500 had 3,000 RPM of usable power. And it came in really, really vicious and violent back in the 88, 89, 90 days, 91. In 92, they changed the firing order. Honda did at the start of the season, made a 500 sound different, and then we all had to do it to try and catch up. The Big Bang firing order actually helped the rideability of them a little bit, broadened the power band a little bit, gave it a little flatter torque curve, instead of everything just being kind of an instant on.
Kevin, you personally own one of those bikes that you race?
I have my bike from 1993 when I won the championship.
From 93. That's cool. So now there's been a kind of resurgence with places like, you know, we haven't had the Ace or anything really like it in the United States. But now that this movement with vintage bikes, cafe racer bikes, there's kind of a resurgence of guys going out and buying these milder two-strokes, GT 500s, 750s, the RDs, things like that. How do you feel about that? And I kind of want to get Mark's take on it as well, too.
You know, I think it's awesome. The sound that two-stroke makes to me is still, you know, it's just sweet music to the ear. Listening to a two-stroke come up on the pipe and really start to pull. Is something that, you know, brings back some great memories, and, you know, to see what guys are doing with old RDs and, you know, the old triples and stuff like that, the H2s and things like that, to me is pretty cool.
How did you? One more thing, how did you start out racing?
You know, I was fortunate enough to grow up at a motorcycle dealership. My parents owned a Yamaha shop. They got a Yamaha franchise in 1964, which is the year I was born. And part of the motivation of mine to get through school and not get in too much trouble was, if I was a good kid at school, I got to ride my motorcycle, because both mom and dad worked at the dealership. When school finished, I went to the dealership, and you know, I just remember how peaceful it used to be, putting my helmet on and going out and riding. You know, I didn't have teachers yelling at me, or other students telling me I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing. You know, it was the peacefulness of it that made motorcycle riding so pleasant. And then the opportunity to ride one and race one and make a living, to me, was just a dream come true.
So you grew up with bikes, the smell of bikes, the sound of bikes, but the bikes you're just talking about there, that you child, as it were they two-strokes?
You know, first thing I ever rode was a Bonanza mini bike set had a Briggs & Stratton lawnmower engine in it. First proper motorcycle was a Honda Mini Trail 50, which is a 50cc four-stroke. After that, most everything I rode was two-strokes. YZ80s to TY80s to 465. It went straight from an 80cc motocross bike to a 100cc, and then right on to 465s and 490s when I started motocrossing. Dirt track back then was my uncle dirt track raced professionally, so I did a bit of dirt track racing as an amateur, and most of the time got to ride his 250 or 360, and they were two-strokes. What I did road race on first in a race that went through the streets of Austin called Aqua Festival. It was my uncle's TT 500 dirt track bike, so it had a front brake on the front of it. Had made nice power, had a good spooled hub on the back, so you could put a nice small gear on it, be able to get the legs out of it that you need to get down the straightaway. Raced it on dirt track tires, only an 8-lap race. The dirt track tires, the Goodyears, held up just fine. So, dirt track bike turned into a road race bike. The first style that I had on a road racer was my foot stuck out, and I kind of had to change that a little bit to be able to ride a super bike and then a Grand Prix bike.
Right.
So, with the leap, as it were, into what today would be MotoGP, which I think would be called back then.
500cc Grand Prix.
Of course. This is what happens as I get older and I forget things. And I would go and watch you and your peers racing, pressed up against the chain link fence, trying to get to see what it's in. Tell us the tale of how you got into that level of racing, from the guy in Austin, bike shop,
racing a dirt
racing
bike,
a dirt bike,
It's funny.
and then being an international superstar.
It's funny how that whole story came to be. In 83, I rode some professional motocross. Rode Houston Supercross in 83 and crashed in my heat race and decided, you know what, I don't have the time to ride 5 days a week. I graduated high school in 82 and my parents said, you need to show some interest in this business now. It's going to be yours one day. So 83, 84, all I did was play around, do a little bit of road racing in 83, which was my first ever real experience on a proper street bike on a track. And I liked it so much that I went back to my parents at the end of 83 and said, can I get a Yamaha street bike to do some club racing? It's something I've kind of enjoyed. And throughout my 84 season, endurance raced against a gentleman by the name of John Ulrich, who went to bat at Suzuki to try and get me a tryout on their superbike. Got the tryout at the end of 84, got the ride, raced in 85. Next thing you know, 86 rolls around and we go to the match races. That was the big break that I got that kind of made my international career happen. I was fortunate enough to get to ride a really well-prepared Suzuki GSXR 750 at the match races. That year they were all at Donington Park, and Barry Sheen was doing the TV commentary. And he watched me ride and watched me, try and crash the bike in the wet and not fall off of it and climb back on it. And I guess he kind of liked my attitude. He kind of liked the way I rode. When the match races finished, all the rest of the Americans went home, and Barry invited me to stay and test the 500 that he went and got out of a museum. I went and did a test at Snetterton on it, and then did race of the year at Mallory Park and finished second. Next thing I know, middle of 1986, I do Holland, Belgium, and Misano for Grand Prix. And only 2 years ago, I just started road racing. So
that's amazing.
Barry was a huge part of that, because he went to bat at Heron Suzuki to get me some support to try and get into Grand Prix racing. And it just so happened that in 1987, Suzuki as a factory came back into Grand Prix racing, which I had a contract in 86, 87 to ride in America on an American superbike. So as soon as my contract finished, I went Grand Prix racing full time in 1988.
And now Suzuki's made a reappearance back into MotoGP now.
They have. They've got a new Grand Prix bike, and they've got a couple young Spanish kids, Alex Espargaro and Maverick Vinales, that are going to ride for them. They were in Austin testing right after the Grand Prix this year in April. I got to do a few laps on the bike, and as fast as I can go on one now, it seems like it's a great motorcycle. So it'll be interesting to see it when it gets raced for the first time in Valencia, Spain, for the last round of the MotoGP Championship with Randy DePune there right now.
That's a world of difference, though, between that Grand Prix bike that you rode and the Grand Prix bikes that they have now when it comes to electronics.
It's a completely different beast. It's a 1,000cc four-stroke. It's probably got 220, 230 horsepower, and it's got electronics helping with absolutely everything. From start to wheelie control to traction control. It doesn't have anti-lock brakes on it yet, but it's probably not too far away, but
And then cruise control after that, maybe?
it seems like when they start racing them, they get in cruise control pretty quick.
Right.
But just unbelievable how far tires, suspension, engine technology, everything's coming. You know, it keeps the manufacturers involved in MotoGP racing at the leading edge of technology as far as their street bikes go, that's for sure.
Yeah, different bike, different race, different riders.
Well, as you may well be remarking, we're here in Orlando, not far from Daytona, which you've already mentioned. A great British hero, who sadly no longer with us, Barry Sheene, who had a horrendous crash. I think one of the all-time horrific crashes. Hit just down the road here at Daytona. And if I'm not mistaken, you've ridden Daytona once or twice. Do take us through it. I've looked at it, I've seen the circuit, the raceway, but I can't quite conceive the speeds and the drama of coming out of those curves.
No, our dear friend Barry was riding a 750 two-stroke here when they had a tire failure just past the start-finish line. And I forget, I think I've seen him 270 plus miles an hour as the thing snaps sideways and throws him into the air. So Daytona is one of those places that when everything's working right, it's kind of boring to race around. You know, the banking, especially back in my day, I raced Daytona 85, 86, 87, and 88. Finally winning the race in 88, which I think lets the manufacturer decide, you know, you don't need to go anymore. You've won it. You've succeeded at Daytona. But the banking is somewhat boring. Modern day sport bikes there, you know, the front wheel is doing 10 or 15, 20 mile an hour less than the rear wheel at start finish, where Barry had his moment. You know, the bikes are out of line. Even with electronics, there's still some wheel spin there. And that's, you know, a super bike that's 200 excess, you know, in excess of 200 horsepower. Back in the day, pretty ho-hum, come out as you can, get up on the banking, shift gears, come around to start finish, slow down, turn, or do the infield. So never was a big issue for us having any kind of wheel spin and going well over 200 mile an hour than the modern bike is at start finish line. So,
was the suspension set up different for Daytona because of the G-forces on the banking?
Absolutely. You know, you get the banking, you get it to where it stays stuck down in the suspension for so long instead of just a quick piece of travel as you brake hard into a corner. Absolutely. If not, the fairing would drag, the foot peg sometimes. You kept your feet too far wrapped around the front of the foot peg. A lot of times the bumps on the banking and you'd end up folding the toe of your boots around the bottom of the foot peg. So you learn some hard lessons at Daytona. And it's always one of those places that if something finicky is going to happen to an engine, you know, the stress and the strains of so much time wide open throttle at Daytona always seems to get those gremlins to come out, that's for sure.
With Daytona, it's one of those, for me speaking as an Englishman and a visitor here, it's one of the icons of speed, but not necessarily of racing, if it makes sense. Where there's this enormous speeds and straightaways off the curve that is almost hard to conceive, whereas grand twisties and whatnot.
It's really a car track, though, right,
Yeah.
Kevin? It's not really. It wasn't designed as a motorcycle road course track.
No, I don't think it was. It was designed as an oval. They built a road course through the middle of it, and funny enough, fairly entertaining. And you know, the tough part about Daytona is there's only 2 right-hand turns in it, and then there's a chicane where you can touch the right side of the tire, and the lap time is in excess of 2 minutes. So it's one of those places that's really easy on a cool day to go left, all the way around to the first turn and go into the first right-hand turn, got cold right side of the tire, a little acceleration coming off, next thing you know, you're high-sided and you're laying on the ground. So turned out to be that a lot of the tire manufacturers found a little softer compound on the right side of the tire since you don't use it nearly as much. Helped with those issues, but you know, lots of guys laying first practice broken collarbones at the exit of the hairpin because of that harder tire, right side not having any heat.
So today, this terrific story. You're racing from being a kid in somewhere, I'll say, the dusty parts of Texas that rises to international stardom, certainly for my generation of kids that are going off to watch racing. Motorbikes today, are you still involved with racing, with youngsters in the next generation of two-wheels and all that adrenaline that's out there? It's got to be put on a track.
You know, I had the fortunate opportunity to get to work with Red Bull Rookies Cup kids when we had the series here in the United States in 2008, and I continued to work with Red Bull through 2009 and 10, but not in an American Red Bull Rookies Cup series, only overseas in the European Cup. I absolutely enjoy trying to help kids who desire to be road racers, to try and help them become better, to walk, to go out and ride with them, to come in and talk to them about the way they're riding and what they're doing, help them make changes to their riding, and watching the kids come back in after trying to do some of the things that I've talked to them about, and saying, look how much my lap times come down, and just the excitement. You know, there's a lot of stuff that you know, is really rewarding in racing motorcycles, but watching that kid's face when he comes in and what you told him has really worked and it's helped him with lap times, you know, that's really, really rewarding for me. And, you know, just the whole motorcycle industry, it's something that, you know, we struggle when we lose friends who race bikes, but we've got to remember that it's the same thing that brought us all together, and just get back on the next one and go. As well, you know, I've been doing a little bit more racing these past couple of years. I've been doing a big endurance race in Japan, the Suzuka 8-hour, and for me that you know, has kind of rekindled some excitement about racing. And you know, I do everything I can to help anybody out there I can become a better, safer rider. And if racing's what you desire to do, I can help you do that too.
Sign me up, please. I love my bikes. I'm just grateful I'm an Englishman because I've had to need what we have as our National Health Service quite a few times as a consequence of very poor riding. So I need to sign up with whatever it is you've got over here.
One more question. All-time favorite track?
You know, that's a dead heat push between Suzuka in Japan and Donington Park in England. The American Grand Prix, the entire time that I raced, was held at Laguna Seca, Wayne Rainey's backyard, and a place that he steadily kicked my ass every time we went. My team was all based Edenbridge. You know, it was, for me, the British is what I could call home. And more times than not, we walked out of that place with the, you know, after standing on the top step of the podium. So that was another really rewarding moment, was friends and family and everybody of all the team being at Donington and going and winning, just seeing the excitement in the family, the whole family's face, not just the mechanics and not just the engineers, but just absolutely everybody involved. And you know, there's some really, really great memories that I have. Donington Park, all the way from match races through my Grand Prix career. Funny enough, my last Grand Prix win, 1994 British Grand Prix. That was it.
But anybody listening to Kevin speaking about his affection for Donington, it's a great circuit for sure, and I've been there once or twice. But just as with circuits here in the USA, the food is crap.
You know, I don't remember what we used to eat when we go for the match races, and anytime I went Grand Prix racing, it seemed like we had a hospitality of some sort. So,
right.
Redgate for a beer every now and then, but no, I don't remember eating many meals down there. Redgate's gone.
Well, that is the horror corner where the cheapest tickets, and that's where I was. Awful food. We hope we've remedied that to some extent. So certainly next time, should you be in London, you've got to come to the cafe, as in the Ace.
Absolutely.
We're here at Ace Corner piece here at AIMExpo. Of course, once Orlando's fully open, you've got to come down here and sample the tea that they do down here at Ace Cafe Orlando. It should be sometime next year.
Great. You know, I really look forward to taking you up on both those offers, whether it's in London or here in Orlando. But we might get to all go back to Donington Park again. It sounds like the British Grand Prix is going to be there next year. So don't go to the first turn and look for Redgate Pub, because run off and safety for the riders is taking the pub away.
Kevin, I can't thank you enough for sitting down with me and my friend Mark talking about racing. It was really a treat. Something I watched. We're about the same age, so I spent pretty much a lot of my time as a young man watching Grand Prix racing. So I appreciate it. And I'm here at the Ace Cafe booth at the 2014 AIMExpo, and we're signing off. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.